Well, everybody, right now, the Middle East is on even more of a razor's edge, as if that was possible. U.S.-Iran tensions hitting all-time highs. And just yesterday, an Iranian F-4 Phantom jet went down in what Iran is saying a training crash, killing a top instructor pilot, all amid this massive war prep, with Iran saying they are preparing for war. And some more of the breaking news is that China is coming into this conflict even more every single day, with them delivering a J-20 model to Iran. So that's very interesting, very odd, maybe just a subtle flex and a show of support. But also this just breaking, China is giving high resolution imagery to Iran as we speak. A tech firm in China has released high resolution satellite imagery showing the US military buildup around Iran amid reports that Washington may strike Tehran as soon as this weekend. Images posted on social media on Thursday by Chinese commercial satellite analysis company Miser Vision, not exactly a very creative name there, shows the latest American deployments at bases in Qatar, Jordan, and Saudi Arabia. The images from Jordan, here's a wild thing, they actually showed 18 F-35 Lightning II stealth fighters and 6 EA-18G Growler electronic warfare attack aircraft on the tarmac of Mawafqa Salti Air Base. The post did not say when or by which satellites the images were taken. And China's relatively smart too. The military buildup in the Middle East isn't a secret, so them giving the satellite imagery to Iran, it's not exactly tipping the hand of the United States, and it's showing some sort of limited support to the regime itself. And then check this out, a little bit on the crash, but actually more than just the crash, this ultimatum for the nuclear deal might give us a lot of information about what's in store over these next few weeks. And then on Thursday, President Trump said that Iran had 15 days to make a deal, and again suggested that the United States would attack if it failed to do so. Iran, in response, warned this. They said facilities and assets would be legitimate targets if the U.S. follows through on its military threats and attacks. They've been saying that from day one. Amir Sayed Iravani, the Iranian ambassador to the UN, made the remarks in a letter to UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres and the President of the Security Council. The letter cited a social media post by Trump on Wednesday, where President Trump said the United States may need to use UK military bases, Diego Garcia, if you've been following my videos, including one on an Indian Ocean island. So refusing to call it Diego Garcia, just that one little base on that Indian Ocean island. Amir from Iran went on to say such a belligerent statement by the President of the United States signals a real risk of military aggression, the consequences of which would be catastrophic for the region and would constitute a grave threat to international peace and security. Because Iran, we are so buttoned up and we are so classy. We care about international law, international peace and security. Don't look at our proxy armies causing mayhem around the globe. Those are proxies. We have no idea what they're up to. But this 10 to 15 day ultimatum for a nuclear deal is huge. This is massive news because at this point, that air power surge into the region is the biggest that we've ever seen. Stealth fighters, carriers, the second carrier has arrived in the region, and then Iran is flexing with these drills alongside Russia and China. That symbolic J-20 model from Beijing, it signals that deeper alliance. This isn't just a routine mishap either with their F-4. This is exposing cracks in Iran's aging air force right when they might need it most. I think Iran's like, all right, well, we got to have an air force. We got to be ready to go. Let's ramp up our training now when we haven't been ramping it up for years. And at that point, you're putting pilots in a position where they might not have enough training to do some of the complex tasks that were asked of this instructor pilot during that night training mission. I'd be shocked if Iran was actually using NVG's night vision goggles. And what a nightmare using night vision goggles in an F-4. An F-4 is a beast. Pickup truck of fighter jets. It's a classic. And I will name drop, my dad, Bodie Bodenheimer, actually flew the F-4. Total stud, but that thing takes precise attention at all times. That thing can try to kill you because it's just older technology, right? So you have to be very focused in, paying attention at all times. It's not the greatest jet in the weather. Obviously flying around mountains in Iran at nighttime, potentially trying to use NVGs that you haven't used in a while. that could be one of the main reasons for this crash. But we'll get more into that and the airframe here in a second, and then stick around to the end of the video because I'll walk through a wild hypothetical scenario should this conflict go down in the next few days and Iran actually get jets airborne. So let's set the stage for this F-4 crash and the bigger picture. So on February 19th, 2026, that Iranian Air Force McDonnell Douglas F-4E Phantom, which was acquired from the United States long ago, that's a Vietnam-era workhorse. It crashed during a late-night training mission out of Shahid Nojay Air Base in Hamadan Province. The jet was running routine maneuvers when it went down about 50 miles, 80 kilometers from the base in the Naubaran area. Both pilots are said to have punched out, and then a general from the Iranian regime, Mehdi Firuzamand, said that the instructor in the front didn't make it due to ejection injuries. And that can happen. Flailing injuries can happen. Typically, it's the backseater. So in an F4, it's going to be a pilot in the front and a weapons systems operator in the back. A lot of times there's problems with seat deconfliction, especially with an old fighter like that. What's the actual maintenance on these ejection seats? What was the profile of the jet when the ejection happened? You know, were they inverted? Were they going extremely fast? But the backseater is said to have survived with minor injuries. But at the end of the day, they'll investigate this. But the maintenance, they're blaming it on some sort of a mechanical issue. But again, it's a US system, so it behooves them to say, yeah, it was a mechanical system, you know, it was the US's fault. Again, the gaslighter in chief, the Ayatollah, is probably like, yeah, just blame it on the US. When in doubt, blame it on the US. But at this point, it could be pilot training as well. I mean, flying at night, flying in the F4, mountainous terrain, likely not having a lot of training. If I was a betting man, I would say pilot error is at the core of this situation. But diving into the Iranian side, Supreme Leader Khamenei is threatening to sink US warships. They're running joint naval drills in the Straits of Hormuz with Russia and China. Satellite shots show them hardening nuclear sites, and the headlines are screaming. But Iran is said to have somewhere around 200 combat jets, mostly going to be rusty US and Soviet relics like the F-4 Phantom, F-5 Tigers, F-14 Tomcats, potentially even MiG-29s, Su-24s, Su-25s, and then there's rumors that Russia is going to be delivering Su-35s very soon. But when it comes to maintenance and the parts, extremely lousy. 30 to 50% potential flying rate just because they don't have the maintenance capability of Western nations and they're not getting the parts for those Western jets, which is why they're likely starting to flip to Russian supplied aircraft. And with Beijing dropping off a scaled model of the J-20, very interesting, just Beijing basically flexing a little bit, saying that we're going to support you, Iran, should something go down. But what I think is happening too with their Air Force, and when it comes to the diligence that's needed to develop a very credible fighter force with the fighter pilots needed to go up there and take care of business, it's a very complex task. And it leaves very quickly. I mean, if you don't fly a fighter jet for a week, you go up there and you have to potentially relearn pretty much everything you just accomplished the week before. So you need to fly that fighter jet basically every day, maybe with 1 to 2 days off a week to actually be competent in that jet. So Iran just isn't able to do that. And that's clear with this most recent crash, but it's been clear long before that, if we're being honest. And I think one of the reasons, what I see, is the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. That's kind of the heart of the Islamic regime's bodyguard force, but they're integrated into all the different armed forces. I think they realized that they're propped up by ballistic missiles, drones, and proxy armies. That's their main thing, is deceptive warfare. So getting really good at these very highly complex tasks that fighter pilots need to get really good at, that's not something that is a focus for the IRGC. They're more focused on deception, proxy armies, and basically just making the Ayatollah happy. Mr. Ayatollah, did I make you happy today? The Ayatollah's like, yeah, kinda. Why are you so needy? Their average age of their fighter jets are about 28 years. 60% of them are grounded at any given time, so they can cannibalize planes and reverse engineer stuff. And then they're probably trying to get things via shady smuggling networks through Turkey, Portugal. And those strikes back in 2025 from Israel gutted about a third of their air defenses, striking S-300s, Bavar 373s, and putting holes in their IADs, their integrated air defense systems. But now China is basically rolling in and plugging those holes, smuggling in gear that China thinks can take on stealth aircraft. And that's the big thing at this point. China and Russia have a bit of a black eye after being embarrassed in the Venezuela raid, where all of their systems basically did this much. So they're basically doubling down. Russia, China, likely getting in as many surface-to-air radars as they possibly can, because Russia and China at this point, for their arms industry, they're thinking they need a win. So again, Iran won't be a slouch because they're being propped up big time by this support from China and Russia. So Iran's trying to flex, but at this point, their gear's got some serious performance issues in the bedroom. I mean, on the battlefield. So likely the Iranian pilots are getting somewhere between 10 to 40 flights a year max. They're probably getting most of those in the F5, which is kind of their training version of their aircraft, and they're not getting a lot of night sorties at all. So again, you haven't done it a lot. You put yourself in a position where you're in an old legacy aircraft, trying to remember what to do at night, maybe trying to integrate NVGs, and that's just a nightmare. A lot of mishaps happen like that when you don't have the experience, you don't have the training, and you go out there and you try to John Wayne it, be an athlete, and make it happen. It typically doesn't turn out well. But China gifted them that J-20 stealth model on February 8th during Air Force Day, and this isn't just symbolic. It's under their 25-year pact that they've said to created, hinting at tech swaps for drones, missiles, radars to counter US and Israel strikes. So what I think China's doing is it's basically boosting morale for the Iranian Air Force and military without outrightly exporting the jet to Iran yet. So zooming in on Iran's drone edge, that's their biggest focus besides fighter jets. Asymmetric plays with the IRGC's Aerospace Force running Shahed kamikaze drones, that's their go-to. Mohar Recon Striker drones, Kaman 22s that mimic the MQ-9 Reaper for long-range hits. These UAVs can pack munitions, and the Shahed drones are explosive kamikaze drones, and that's going to be the main focus of Iran. Again, with the support of Russia, with the support of China, all three of those nations use that Shahed variant. Now the US has stepped in as well with the Lucas drone, basically mimicking the Shahed, but likely much more advanced tech and avionics in that. But Iran is going to focus on swarms. Their main goal is going to be to swarm the different naval assets, swarms against Israel. All that's going to kick off if hostilities go down here in the next few weeks. And then let's move to a section I like to call 4D chess. So countering Iran with 4D chess moves, it's going to be leaning heavily on stealth assets and standoff weapons. F-35 slipping through the degraded radars, making sure they have what it takes to go up against Chinese radars. F-22s owning the skies while EA-18Gs jam the different Shahed drones that are going to be blasting and swarming towards US assets, towards bases in the region, towards allies in the region, even striking as far as the UK, potentially with Iran's ballistic missiles, will be one of their plays that will need to be countered, because their swarm tactics, their ballistic missiles, their whole goal with that will be to overwhelm other nations with those two assets. And then they want to close the Strait of Hormuz. That's something that they'll probably try to do with mines and fast boats. So suppression of enemy air defenses, taking down Iran's missiles while also taking down their fast boats. But as you can see, this night operation crash of that F-4 shows that Iran is going to struggle at nighttime. They're going to struggle getting any fighters airborne, and that is a weak point that has just been highlighted to every other air force around the globe. So let's move to a hypothetical situation. So let's say a formation of US F-15E Strike Eagles are vectored over the Persian Gulf to smoke an incoming Iranian drone swarm that's coming towards naval assets. They're threatening the carrier group. Intel says it's Shahed drones and Mohars that are buzzing in at low level. The Eagles lock on to these different drones and they start popping them with the APKWS Advanced Precision Kill Weapon System rockets, and they shred over 30 of these drones, basically creating a fireworks show over the Persian Gulf, fragmenting those drones and making them rain down into the sea. But mid-engagement, there is a wild card here. Leave it to Iran. Imagine that, a wild card. Weird. But an AWACS calls out bandits that are mixed in with the drones. Iran has mixed in F-4 Phantoms and F-14s and disguised them as drones, trying to get them through to drop weapons on naval assets and even fire off missiles at airborne assets like the E-2D Hawkeye and the AWACS. You got to protect those high-value assets. Iran knows if they can strike those down, that is a big black eye for the US. So the lead F-15Es see the F-4s and F-14s and they unleash AMRAAMs. At this point, multiple AMRAAMs flying off the jets, and the focus for the F-15E Eagle pilots would be using the AMRAAMs for the actual aircraft, the F-14s and the F-4s, and then saving the AMRAAMs and the AIM-9Xs for the fixed wing assets that are manned and not using those on drones. So you have to be very careful at distinguishing what you're seeing on your radar. Is it a drone? Is it a fighter? And using everything in your inventory to determine what it actually is. So then you have a two-ship behind behind you that are targeting the drones with their APKWS rockets, continuously striking down the drones, while the 2-ship in front is taking down the manned assets, shooting those AMRAAM boomsticks at the F-4s and F-14s. It wouldn't be a good day for the Iranian Air Force again. Those F-14s and F-4s would be shredded by those AMRAAMs, and at that point, once the Eagles clear out the air picture, they'd team up with F-18 Strikers to roll in and drop GBU-54 laser-guided bombs on pre-planned Islamic Revolutionary Guard targets, command bunkers, and missile sites to light it all up with that precision blast that would be needed to take down all the different IRGC sites in that initial wave. So wrapping this all up, guys, that F-4 crash that just happened in Iran is a stark reminder of Iran's air vulnerabilities, and ultimately it highlights this stare down and what would likely happen with Air Force versus Air Force. Obviously, a lot more pieces on the board. We've also got China giving that J-20 nod to Iran, and if nothing else, I think that just tells us that they've definitely dropped off some special surprises. They haven't just dropped off fireworks to Iran. They've likely dropped off advanced surface-to-air radars. So at this point, the powder keg has hit level 11. What do you think happens next? Let me know in the comments below. And then if you want to see me do it live every week, join the Max Ready Room live. There's a link in the description for that. I'll see you guys on that live. And then follow me on X, follow me on Instagram. I'm posting there pretty much every day. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll also see you on this next video that pops up right here. This is Ryan, also known as Max Afterburner, signing off.